All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game of the week in college football. Ohio State taking on TCU. First big test for both teams. For the Buckeyes, ranked in the top 5. For TCU, ranked in the top 15. Of course, Ohio State got together with the Big 12 2 consecutive years with mixed results, home and away. This time a quasi-road game and going down to Dallas. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. That keeps us going here at Mark Rogers TV. We got one of our favorites, Claire Crawford, on the line to break down the Buckeyes. Claire, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing so great. It's finally here.
It is finally here. Sure, blowing out Oregon State and Rutgers is one thing. The games have to be played. You can't play a top 10 team every week. But when you know the inevitable, they're kind of tough to sit through, and it's 42-0 in the third quarter. I find myself in that bind as well. Okay, well, this game's over, but they're going to be playing for the next hour and a half. But the result's been decided. But do I want to watch the Buckeyes and see some players get out there and see how they turn out? So what are your initial thoughts, for as much as it was predictable the first 2 weeks, of how the Buckeyes have looked?
Sure. I mean, you can color me surprised as far as how well this offense is running. You know, we saw shades of Dwayne Haskins and what he was able to accomplish in the Michigan game last year. But I really don't think anyone but Dwayne and Ryan Day and Urban Meyer and maybe some of these receivers that have been so hungry knew exactly what was going to be happening. And we had a few question marks around the integrity of the offensive line for Dwayne, and we had some movement around there at Ohio State. And I've just been absolutely thrilled. It's not like Ohio State has faced two Teflon defenses, but they did what they were supposed to do against those type of defenses. It's a little bit spooky when you see a team that has the capability and the talent like Ohio State go out and only hang 21 on a defense like the likes of Oregon State and Rutgers. Ohio State has notoriously hung over 50 now. Is it the third year in a row that they've done that? And the first year of the 3 years that they've even allowed a point from Rutgers. So we, as Buckeye fans, wish Chris Ash well and want him to do well, but it has not been a pretty picture. And I think Ohio State fans kind of expected those two things going in. What I was most pleased by between game 1 and game 2 was the adjustment of the defense. You know, in game 1, I think all of us were kind of skeptical of this secondary, especially. I think I really was starting to question the absence of Kerry Combs and his value to the team. And linebacker play was not up to par and up to expectations. And Greg Schiano really kind of circled the wagon, so to speak, and made huge adjustments. And it just seemed like everyone was much more on the same page for Rutgers. Now, we didn't see a whole lot of what we saw versus Oregon State as far as misdirections and screens and play action so much with Rutgers. And that was definitely Oregon's game plan. But we didn't see a whole lot of missed angles and missed tackles or missed assignments against Rutgers. And I think that's going to be something huge that's going to play a part into how well the Buckeye defense does against TCU.
Yeah, it was a bit alarming to a certain extent that they were giving up these 75 and 80-yard plays to a team that was one of the most or the least explosive teams in college football last season and probably will be this year. I always question it when it's happening and it's 42-14 rather than if it was a tight game or early in the game when it's still close and it's meaningful, trying not to question that the players would let up or just the intensity. A lot of it just can't be accounted for, the intensity of a game, a football game, when it's a certain team or a certain situation or a certain score versus 52-3 or 58-7. And it's just human nature to kind of let up. And for Ohio State fans, yes, a good sign to see them go out against Rutgers. And as you stated, There's not a whole lot more that they could have done. Yes, in a sense, it's not impressive because of the opponent, but there's a whole lot of really good teams out there that are expected to do big things, and they go out and sure they win the games against an Oregon State or Rutgers, but it's 31-10. It's 28-14. It's, they play sloppy, they get through. They're by far the better team, but they didn't just go in there and just lay down the throttle like Ohio State has the last 2 weeks.
And I think inherently, because this is a very aggressive Buckeye defense, and it has been under Greg Schiano, we've seen them play very aggressively, and then add the inexperience or the youth to that as well, along with being first or second game. A lot of these guys are trying to prove themselves. We'll see, when I say missed angles, we'll see over pursuit and just some little adjustments here and there. Things that Greg Schiano was not saying, the house is on fire over. The adjustments that they were able to make, and it looks like they've really got a couple things shored up, at least to have that experience shored up before they face definitely a bigger challenge in TCU.
So, of course, we've had the unique dynamic the first 2 weeks of Urban Meyer not being on the sidelines. So he doesn't coach at all for several weeks, a few weeks, I think it was 3, and then he comes back and he's coaching the team and has to kind of hit the road during game time. And that's got to be very odd for the team to have to experience and respond to that. And there's going to be one more week of that in terms of a game that has to be played. And now an opponent that is going to be a challenge is expected to be a team that the best effort is going to have to be there. It's kind of difficult because we got to know that Urban Meyer having the amount of time that he's had with this staff, it's not like he's got a new staff in play that there would be little that would be on the same page. That you got to think there was not much that deviated from if Urban Meyer would have been there the first 2 weeks.
And that's the other, and we'll say in quotation marks, of having Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day. And any of these coaches that are assistants or, almost all the position coaches can go off and coach anywhere they'd like, or even take head coaching jobs. A lot of them are head coaches formerly, like Kevin Wilson and Greg Schiano. And I think that the leadership, obviously that's something that's going to get you hired at Ohio State. That's inherent to you having a role at Ohio State as a coach. But I sense that there may be players playing in solidarity for Urban Meyer. They've got loyalty to Urban Meyer. And I think a lot of these guys are playing with that in mind. I can't speak for them, but I get the sense that there's some sort of kind of a fraternity almost for Urban, and he'll be back soon. He'll be back next week.
Claire Crawford joining us to break down the Buckeyes and at TCU. Big matchup for both teams, obviously, as Ohio State faces up against the Big 12 for a third consecutive year. Fort Worth, Dallas, TCU's campus, only 25 miles away. It is a neutral site game, but yes, there is a distinct advantage there. Claire, I'm going to serve up the next question in a very vague fashion for good reason, because I don't want to lead you in a certain direction.
Okay.
So this would be a bad example, but it's the true example that if Ohio State and Alabama played 3 or 4 years from now, having transpired what did by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's choice last year. Obviously, Alabama had nothing to do with the decision, but they were the beneficiary of the decision in a very close call. And again, the only thing that makes this not a great example is because there's typically venom all across college football targeted at an Alabama or Ohio State. But let's say it was some other team, but even Alabama. If it's 3 or 4 years from now and Ohio State plays a non-conference game against Alabama, do you have more incentive as a fan? Do you have more ire for that particular team, regardless of who they are, because of what happened by choice of a playoff selection committee?
So I know where you're going.
It's
For
sorry, it's
two
pretty
reasons.
obvious. I know.
For two reasons, I know where you're going. But I think the key word in what you said was as a fan. Yeah, as a fan, I might consider it a grudge match, right? I might consider it uh, uh, payback, you know. But as a player in a team, um, 2014, none of these guys would have been part of that. And Ohio State, unless they have venom for Alabama and Oregon, was, to the last of my knowledge, not the only team that squeaked in there. So with Ohio State having come out on top of that in 2014, I think we can all say, yay, the committee made the right decision. But the Ohio State has also been on the other side of that. So as a fan, you're always looking to kind of grab onto something or make the game more exciting or a rivalry. But I would really seriously doubt that any of these players have that on their mind or any of these coaches have it on their mind. I'm sure the fans would love to see that for many reasons, but and yeah, as an Ohio State fan, I'm not going to say I'm better than that. I definitely would consider it a grudge match if that were to happen, but no, I doubt that TCU has that on their mind.
As you know, Claire, I will forever counter the argument of the 2014 selection with why does Alabama and Oregon get a free pass?
Yeah.
Because I never understood that it came down to the other three teams. Florida State was undefeated, fine. But the other five had one loss. But for some reason, Ohio State had to, and TCU and Baylor had to be scrutinized. So I bring this up because of, yes, the scenario that I tried to somewhat avoid, but I knew it was inevitable, that it was pretty apparent where I was leading that, but also because over the course of the off season, Claire, I had two TCU bloggers, broadcasters, writers on who stated that, and I'm sitting there conducting the conversation about their football team just in general, and then with a glance at the schedule, knowing what happened in 2014, but not thinking of that as a factor. And they immediately went to grudge match. TCU fans can't wait to get revenge.
Wow, it seems like a lot, and it seems over the top. But football in Texas is competitive. It always will be. High school football in Texas is competitive. Texas football rivals Ohio football as far as the tradition there, and I can't blame them for being passionate. But it's not going to fix you. That's what I wish I could tell every fan that wants revenge, is that it's not going to fix you. Ohio State will always hate Florida for what happened in 2006 for football and basketball. The Ohio State fans will forever hate Florida because of that, even though we were gifted Urban Meyer. It just is never, that is never going to go away. When something sticks in your craw as an Ohio State fan, it's in there for good. So I can't blame them for it, and I admire their passion.
Yeah, so any connection there from a player standpoint, as you mentioned, there's really not one. From a practice standpoint, there is, because you would have to have been a freshman who was redshirted, who is now a redshirt senior. So you couldn't have played in a possible game. So you weren't competing on the field in games for the two teams, but you were on the team. Um, and I'm sure we're talking about a couple guys. And again, they weren't playing and would not have played in a playoff game for either team back in 2014. The site itself brings back good memories for Ohio State fans. Of course, the site of the national championship game against Oregon, and then just a few months ago, defeating USC in the Cotton Bowl. So from the standpoint of taking a fairly young team with a lot of impact players, Dwayne Haskins being first and foremost, that have not experienced a lot on the road, which I know I say that going back to stepping on the field at the Big House in the second half. That's huge. But other guys certainly on the field that are impact players that are rather young, that are going to step out onto a field where they at least are acquainted with the environment. Just going back again to January in the Cotton Bowl.
Well, And like you mentioned, as far as youth and inexperience, and they really haven't had to experience this. Dwayne Haskins, obviously, other than the very high pressure game up in the big house and stepping in for JT. On top of all that, Dwayne hasn't really had to face a defensive line like what he's going to see with TCU, nor has Ohio State's offensive line had to face um, the likes of this defensive line with TCU. So, we haven't seen a lot of Dwayne Haskins on the move. We haven't seen a lot of plays called for it, and we haven't seen a lot of hurries. We haven't seen him really had to be flushed out of the pocket. Now, granted, he looks entirely comfortable, confident, smooth, quick with these reads. But the way their defense is structured, TCU's defense is structured, it may change that a little bit, and it may also change the complexion of Ohio State's offense. We may see a little more balance as far as that's concerned. Ohio State, we've seen Dwayne be extremely efficient. I think 79% completion rating. We've seen him be really efficient, and we've seen still Mike Weber and JK with tempo. There's a lot of opportunities to get a lot of these guys involved. There's still a lot of offense that they've been able to put on the board, but still a little out of whack as far as it's a little pass heavy. So we may have to see that balance out a little bit because of that pressure. And then, we may even see Tate become involved. We saw what Tate Martell was able to do last week against Rutgers. I was thoroughly impressed, not only by his down the field ability, but also him being able to really get out of some tricky situations and get flushed out of the pocket and make some plays out of what seemed to be broken plays. So I'm confident that they are definitely facing the biggest challenge that Ohio State offense has faced so far this year. I think the big game environments do more to kind of motivate these guys and steel them together as a team as it would intimidate them. I don't see that happening much at all.
TCU typically has explosive teams, and they, in particular, do this time around. Jalen Rieger, Cavante Turpin, known as two of the fastest players in the country. Yes, it's interesting in terms of Tate Martell, and I would like to see him get into the game from a curiosity standpoint because, okay, JT Parrott was a good runner because he wasn't overly explosive or dynamic as a runner in terms of speed, but he was faster than most quarterbacks. But it was more of an instinct and timing and just smarts. He knew how to read his blocks, when to go, when not to go. It was just football acumen what made him a really good runner. Dwayne Haskins doesn't want to run. He's a pass-first guy. He can run. He's mobile. But Tate Martell, from the time that he stepped on a practice field at Ohio State, all you ever heard was, man, this guy can go. And we saw it against Rutgers a little bit. We'll see it against possibly against a speedier defense this time around. We've got a couple questions here. I guess we can tag team. And one comes from our guy, 28AD28, who I mistakenly called Too Bad 28 for a long time, but it was 28AD28, and he was very, very forgiving for that. But it's a homage to Adrian Peterson, the great Oklahoma running back who wore 28 AD all day. Not AP, but it's all day. That got me confused too as well. So that's not difficult to do. So he is asking how TCU might attack the Ohio State defense. So I got a few things rummaging around in my mind of what might be successful.
I do
Your
too.
thoughts? Yeah.
Well, Sean Robinson is he's a sniper when it comes to I should say he's more of a viper when it comes to his running abilities. He's averaging like 11 yards per carry himself. He's definitely a dual threat guy. He's more of a dual threat than Dwayne. He actually has very, very similar stats compared to Dwayne, but he's just not quite as accurate, not quite of the downfield arm strength that you'll see out of Dwayne. But he's definitely something that we're going to have to see Ohio State's defense play extremely disciplined and stick to that assignment football. We saw we saw that the linebacker play, even with the improvement against Rutgers, has something left us to be desired. And it's really going to need to be just absolutely sterling to keep Sean Robinson at bay.
So it's a good thought. Yes. I was going to take a different angle in regards to the Ohio State supposed line advantage up front defensively against the TCU offensive line. Ohio State probably is the second best defensive front in the nation because Clemson's is just off the charts in terms of NFL prospectus. Certainly one of the top five. We see the damage that they did against Rutgers last week. In particular, TCU's offensive line. I saw bits and pieces against SMU. I had the game on, wasn't really paying that close of attention to really get a read on that. But I know that they only brought back 2 or 3 starters off the offensive line last year. So it was going to be a sore spot. And it's actually something that they talked about in my connection with TCU beat writers during the offseason, as that's going to be a trouble spot against that defensive front. So I don't think anything's changed or anything's been played out in the first 2 games to change my assessment there, that that's going to be key for TCU's offensive line to play out of its mind, number one, and for the play calling to protect that offensive line. So I think they do that in a couple ways. Great. By using, Sean Robinson in the way that you're talking about. And then also when they go to the air, getting the ball out of his hand quickly. He's not going to be dropping back 30 or 32 times like on a 7-step drop, reading the defense. This is going to be like isolation, boom, get it out of his hand to this guy in the flat. And then, of course, they can't live off that because then the corners will creep up and they'll take their shots downfield, but it's not going to be like, Drew Brees or Peyton Manning, carving up a defense from the pocket. Yeah, they're gonna need his legs, and they're also gonna get the ball out of his hand to try to neutralize the Ohio State defensive front. Something similar to what Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma did last year. Baker Mayfield being on a different planet at this point than Sean Robinson as a precision passer. So I don't know if he can take advantage the way Baker Mayfield did, because they designed that game plan really well, considering what Ohio State brought to the table defensively and what they lacked in taking advantage of those issues with linebacker coverage and what we saw in Columbus last year. So what we Ohio State fans don't want to see is Sean Robinson to be this week's Kellen Mond, the Texas A&M quarterback who's got a high ceiling, can run around, big kid, highly recruited, has a skill set in terms of athleticism, but has been scattershot, 51% passer. And then all of a sudden he clicked against Clemson in the second half and scared them out of the stadium, and a 2-point conversion away from sending the game into overtime, and threw for like 430 yards because he suddenly started those passes started to find their targets more consistently. And if that happens with Sean Robinson, then we could have a barn burner, which brings us to this kind of plays into what I set up with a defensive front against the Horned Frogs. Offensive front is Nick Bosa, Chase Young. They're wanting us, Claire, to predict sack totals. Well, those are usually 1 or 0 or maybe 2. So there's not a whole lot of variance there, but I'll let you take that.
Maybe we'll do an over-under.
Okay.
I will say over 2.
For those 2 players combined.
For those 2 players combined. It would be great. But I just think, like you said, I think they're going to figure out a way to, because they know that's going to be that's the strength. Like Chase and Nick have just been this incredible tandem so far. They've put up crazy numbers. They're really doing a great job of getting to the quarterback so far. Nick was a Bednarik Weekly Award winner, and he's already got a touchdown under his belt. And they're going to have to figure out, if they're double teaming one, somebody else is going to be open. So they've really got to. I can see them trying to do some screening to neutralize that as well. But again, like you mentioned, it's just going to be a domino effect. And Ohio State is really great with adjustments. So I think that you're right as far as that could be a plan of attack. But and we're seeing everybody back to healthy as far as the backfield as well. So we're watching Jordan Fuller get back in action, and hopefully he's able to contribute like we think he should.
Claire Crawford joins us to break down the Buckeyes as they prepare to go to Dallas, take on TCU. Big matchup that's been much anticipated between the Big Ten and the Big 12. Claire, the advantage I have is that I get to see the chat before you do, so I can read the questions here. And I just have to take this one on first. So 288028, I love you. You know that. You're on here all the time. You're a solid supporter, but this question is just nuts. Okay, this is why. Okay, assuming Haskins continues to play at his current level and stays a second season, where would you rank him in the all-time Ohio State quarterback discussion? Let the kid play a few games, first of all. Let him play. Let's let him play for a month. It's September 14th of his first season. Okay, I know he threw 7 very important passes against Michigan, and that was big. But first of all, and then you also understand 288028 that you're putting in your question, assuming that he plays at his current level. Well, he's completing 79% of his passes. So if we assume that, I will say hands down, he is the greatest quarterback in the history of the school. If he can keep up 79% completion percentage and never throw an interception and throw 5 touchdowns a game, he is going to be
by far.
You have answered your own question. He will be the greatest quarterback. He will be the greatest quarterback in the history of college football,
right?
Let alone Ohio State. He will win 3 Heisman trophies. I'm sorry, 28AD. I'm just having fun here, but you know what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that for the same exact reason. Yes, we would love to see that as Ohio State fans. We would love to see Dwayne continue on that trajectory. It's unrealistic.
I am going to make a prediction right now that Dwayne Haskins will throw an interception this year, and I'm going to make another prediction that I'm even more definite on, that he is not going to finish the season completing 79% of his passes.
I think that's not extremely bold.
Because it's never happened.
Right.
All right, good stuff. All right, I get an LOL back from 288028. All is well. He understands.
Good.
He gets it. So you guys know on the chat and the people that will be watching this afterwards, and I say this all the time, and obviously it makes sense that if you've joined the chat late, you'll want to wait for the video to process and post. It'll be on the channel just a few minutes after we wrap up. Then you go back and you watch what you missed. I will have my predictions out. Claire, I made a promise to the Mark Rogers TV viewer fan base that before the season that I would do my predictions every Wednesday night. And I'm 0 for 3 now. It creeps into Friday and then and I get them out. I get them out before somebody starts playing. I do. But so I haven't made a prediction on this game, and because I release a prediction video, I am not making a prediction.
Okay.
Somebody is putting us on the spot here for a prediction. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at that, if you've thought about it.
I have.
Okay.
I think that even though both of these teams have really staunch defenses, I think it's going to be a shootout, so to speak, a shootout. So I'm going with 32-21, which is a quasi shootout in terms of both of those defenses and the points that they've allowed so far. Ohio State.
I'm just going to go out and say it because it was in my head earlier today when somebody approached me, and then it was in my head when you started to give your dissertation there. I'm like a touchdown beyond you, but the same point spread. I'm at 38-28.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked by that at all. I would definitely still hang my hat on that prediction.
I think there's a correlation to be made, and we'll see how it plays out Saturday night, because the the most talented team doesn't always win, but there is a separation of talent on these two teams, and that's not to discount TCU's speed and athleticism, but they don't have it layer after layer after layer on the depth chart, and they also don't have it all over everywhere. So the correlation I'll make is with the two Oregon games we've seen in the last 10 years, where in those situations they were postseason games. So for 6 weeks, I don't know how you felt, Claire, but as an Ohio State fan, but also trying to take it from a neutral standpoint as well, doing what I do. I heard Oregon's too fast. They're too quick. They're too fast in space. The tempo's too fast. They're Ohio State can't keep up with them. And my point was always, okay, in 5 years, when we count the NFL players on both of these rosters, it won't be close. TCU/Oregon will have 10 or 12, and Ohio State's going to have like 32. They'll have 3 times as many NFL players on the roster. Now that doesn't, as Iowa proved last year, that doesn't always equate to a win, but most of the time it does. At some point in the game, it's not all about speed and quickness on the outside, where TCU can probably match Ohio State, but man, those big guys up front that just lean on people and cause havoc, that where Ohio State's going to produce more NFL players along those two fronts, that over 4 quarters usually makes a difference.
I totally agree with you. I agree that that's usually where the disparity, and it's part of what when I'm watching the game as a fan, and I see a team kind of get on the board early, or someone kind of misses an assignment on defense. I feel at this point like Ohio State is so deep. They've got so much talent and so much depth that when they do run that tempo, it is just too much.
Hopefully Claire's still with us. I will hang on and wait for that response, but she's talking about the Buckeyes' depth against TCU, and if she has figured out that she may have lost us or we lost her, she may jump right back on. Anthony Williams, 58-3 Buckeyes. That might be a little bit much. And again, we hope that Claire rejoins us. Buckeyes, TCU should be a great one, 8:30 Eastern time on Saturday night. Everybody watching right here, you bet I will be back here with instant analysis right after the game. And Claire hopefully will shout out as soon as, unless she's sending me a text, as soon as she's able to jump right back in on the chat. So we'll have some college football available for you tomorrow, as I have the first 2 weeks of the college football season, everyone. I'll be here at 10 a.m. and get you set for the noon kickoffs with our college football kickoff show. And then throughout the day with instant analysis, probably after the noon game, the 3:30 game, the 7 o'clock game, in those time windows, catching the very end of those games where we've got a ton of noon games, ton of 3:30 games, and we'll bring you instant analysis, watch the final drives with you, and we'll have a good time doing that. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things, help out the channel. We bring you the best discussion, debate, and analysis in college football. And of course, the newsletter. Got to join the newsletter. The newsletter has drawn some good reviews, and I appreciate the support. Any suggestions you have? So if anybody's on the line right now or will be watching the video once it posts, please send your email to MarkRogersTV@gmail. I will not clutter up your inbox. I will just send you one newsletter per week, and it will be worth your time if you love college football. And if you're watching me right now, I'm going to bank on that you love college football, regardless of your team, your conference, whatever it is. I will have information for you, stats, trends, facts you won't find anywhere else. My take, a channel update as we build a community here. I want you guys to be on the inside of my thoughts, my vision about how we build out the channel as well. Claire has jumped off, so either she can't get in, or I know she's going to try to get back in, but maybe the cell phone went down or whatever it is. And I will stick around for a few minutes as we wrap this up. I did want to address one other thing concerning the Buckeyes and the Horned Frogs. Ohio State will be able to stay fresh with the depth they have. Nick Medley. Nick, maybe this is the first time you've watched a Mark Rogers TV. Maybe you're one of those people that just watches and doesn't comment very much, but I have yet to see your name. So welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Anthony Williams, the same. Please like and comment, subscribe as well. So discussion, debate like nowhere else, analysis on college football each and every day, every night throughout the year, even in the middle of May. We're sitting here and we are analyzing college football. And if there's anything that I can do differently, any suggestions you have for content that you would like to hear, send me those suggestions. So I'm guessing that Claire can't make it back. And so we may wrap it up right here. I do have a number that you can call. And I will hang out for just a minute. It's 860-325-3687. I'll put it in the live chat as well. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. If anything's on your mind concerning Ohio State TCU or anything in college football, I'm ready to talk it up. I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks for joining the channel. Thanks for watching. And a lot of people like to comment, get in arguments, and let me know what they think. Others just hang out and watch, and that's fine as well. So I appreciate it. We're going to build this out as best we can and continue to do so. So 860-325-3687. If you have anything on your mind concerning college football, we do have a very under-the-radar group of 5 game tonight with, I believe, Georgia State and Memphis. Can't necessarily say that I'm going to catch that, but I think I'm going to release a video tonight. One's going to be my predictions. Got to get those out. I also made a list of the bottom 10 in college football. So not necessarily the 10 worst teams in college football, but kind of the fun list of bottom 10. Like Arizona. Who's not going to make fun of Arizona right now, considering that they've got a Heisman Trophy candidate, or they did at the start of the season? Then you match him up, Khalil Tate, with a guy that's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer and Kevin Sumlin, and they have just looked awful, losing to BYU at home, going to Houston and losing that game at one point 38-0 before putting 18 meaningless points on the board. So I put together a bottom 10 list. I don't know if I'm going to do anything with it, but that might become part of the content going forward. And of course, my predictions. I also was thinking about kind of going through the TV schedule for the day, releasing a video each week of basically how I was going to approach my TV viewing from the standpoint of looking at the better teams and the better matchups and games. And then certainly having my backup plan as we go through the day of, okay, game choice number 1 is 41-10 in the third quarter. I'm moving on to game number 2 or game number 3. And I typically have about 3 screens going at the same time watching college football. You guys let me know. And it certainly seemed to be the case in week 1, but not necessarily week 2, where with about 15 to 16,000 views for the instant analysis, that you guys enjoyed us getting on here near the end of the big games and doing instant analysis during, let's say, the final couple drives of an Auburn-Washington game, and then taking you through post-game analysis and then getting you into the next window of games, the first few drives, and then letting you watch the rest of the game. But doing instant analysis at the end of these games, where last week the response didn't seem to be as great. So I didn't necessarily know how to read that. I know that there might have been bigger names, bigger brands, bigger games going on in that week 1 with LSU, Miami, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Michigan, Notre Dame. And of course, we had more football throughout the weekend spread out that I could do that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then, of course, last week was basically just a Thursday, Friday, Saturday to a certain extent. And even the games on Thursday and Friday weren't great games, or huge matchups, I should say. I don't even remember who played on Thursday night last week. But the Friday game was just TCU and SMU. So again, You guys let me know if you like the instant analysis, because I think it's been successful in the past. I get on here at 00 on the clock and give my take on the game, and of course take your comments as well, and phone calls 860-325-3687. I'll hang out for another minute in case somebody wants to talk. A lot of people had commented over the last several months that they wanted a call-in show, so I've added the phone line 860-325-3687. So if anything's on your mind concerning anything in college football, we'll take your call. All right. Otherwise, I will see you guys 10 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday. That's tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time for our kickoff show. And we will see you soon talking up college football. All right. Claire's phone died. But again, I'll take some calls if you guys are there and want to talk. Vicky's on the line as well. I've yet to see Vicky's name in the live chat or on any comments. So Vicky, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you're stumbling across the channel for the first time and you love college football or you love any particular team, Vicky, this is the place for you. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We are the voice of college football right here. 860-325-3687. Going once, going twice. I will see you guys at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I will have the notifications go out, and we'll see you back here bright and early tomorrow morning. You guys forgive me. It's not my best time of day. I'm a late night guy, but I'll be a bit bleary-eyed, but ready to go, ready to talk college football, 10 o'clock in the morning before the noon kickoffs. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much for your support.